Every time I go through a period of what feels like acute grief response, like a really intense grief response, I think there's something to learn from it. And those are the things that have led to the healing practices, what this is named for, healing practices and true stories. So it's like, those are how healing practices have come to me, is that I can say I've gone through this really heavy, intense grief time and I came out learning a few things. I came out of that period of intensity learning some things, and I want to share those things with you. Hello. My name is Sarah, and I'm the host of a podcast called Enduring Grief, Healing Practices and True Stories of Living After Loss. I am here today to talk about how exciting season 3 is. And I mean, if we're in grief language, exciting maybe doesn't speak to you the way that it would in a different subject. But by exciting, I mean, I am honored to be a part of your grief journey, or somebody who loves grief journey, or your supporters journey. I am honored that the guests for season 3 are willing to sit with me and you and talk about grief in really vulnerable and spectacular, remarkable ways. And, we've got some new ideas. So if you've been a listener, you know this. And if you are a new listener, please go back, check out season 1 and 2. But what you might find is that I can be what's called a judgy griever. And I fight that a lot on the podcast because I don't think it's helpful. And I'm learning because a lot of my focus has been on grief solely related to the death of a person. And what I know for sure is that there are components of a grief process that are similar across the span of grief. And it's not about comparing like, oh, this person died. Well, I lost my job, so I know what it feels like to grieve. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I'm suggesting is that if you lost your job and then somebody else lost a person, there's tiny little slivers of both of their experiences that are very aligned. Because ultimately we're learning to live with something we don't want to be true. And we have to make something of it. So along those lines, we're branching out this season. We're talking about grief that isn't related only to the loss of a person. We're talking about divorce grief. We're talking about illness grief. We're talking about mental health grief. We're talking about all sorts of different ways in which we are all trying to live in this reality in the most meaningful way, to come together in community, to be a support to one another about all the types of grief. Okay, I keep saying all the types of grief, a few of the types of grief, because there's so many millions and billions types of grief that the fact that I'm saying all the types of grief is ridiculous. So I got it. It's ridiculous. And I think for all the types of grief, you might find something here to apply to the types of grief, even if we don't talk about that specific type of grief. Another new part of the season is the video piece. So if you're just listening right now and you are like, I've always wondered, what does this look like? You can find me on YouTube. So go find me on YouTube. You can see my face. You can see my office. You might also see a changing set because I'm struggling with the video piece and finding what I like and how to create this environment that is in my head in real life. So thank you for your patience on that. Also, the technology is a little tricky for me. So there's been a real uncomfortable learning curve with the technology, and I think I'm getting there. I am honored that you are joining me alongside my journey in grief, because if you are a new listener, you might not know that I lost a child and I lost my dad within the span of just a few months, nearly 10 years ago. And, the interesting, I don't know, here I go again with these weird words, interesting, the tragic, the revealing, I don't know what the word is for it. But the part about it that surprised me this winter was that I was in some real dark days of grief. And it's been almost 10 years. And even though my people are saying like, of course, because I have very wonderful and supportive people, there is still this cultural element and an element of the story in my mind that says, enough already. Enough already. Like, shouldn't I should not be surprised by this at the very least. Or I should know what to do when I feel like I've been hit so hard by a grief wave that I can't catch my breath. And this past winter of 26, I found that there was many weeks where I couldn't catch my breath and I really wasn't sure what to do. So I learned some things this winter, and I'm going to talk about those things with you during season 3. Because the bottom line, guys, is that grief is a practice. Because I don't think we ever get so good at it that it stops. I also don't think that if you're like really missing somebody you love, you want it to stop. The deep anxiety part that makes me real sick some of the times. Yeah, I would be okay with that part stopping. And again, I don't know. It also feels really good to sob and wail sometimes, because that is sometimes how sad I am. So these are things I'm learning right here in front of you today. Because it's easy to say, yeah, I wish the rattling around part would stop. But then I don't know, that's also an expression of my grief. So maybe it's me and that part's okay too. It's hard and it's part of it and it's a practice. So every time I go through a period of acute, what feels like acute grief response, like a really intense grief response, I think there's something to learn from it. And those are the things that have led to the healing practices, what this is named for, healing practices and true stories. So it's like, those are how healing practices have come to me, is that I can say I've gone through this really heavy, intense grief time and I came out learning a few things. I came out of that period of intensity learning some things, and I want to share those things with you. And all of the guests this season, they say the same thing and they want to share those things with you. So I hope you'll continue to listen and be a part of season 3 with us, and go back and be a part of season 1 and 2 if it feels right. And, follow us on all the places. We're Clear Mourning, Mourning. And the mission of the nonprofit I started is to shift the culture of grief through support, innovation, and awareness. One way I'm doing that is with this podcast. I'm trying to talk about real ways people get through, real ways people learn to live on the other side of each and every one of these grief chapters, because the chapters just keep coming. But we do get to the end of a chapter and we start a new chapter in the grief process. And I think there's just something to really be captured from each of those chapters for all of us. And so I want to fill this space with those stories, those true stories of how people went through those chapters, how they moved through them, what they learned, and what it looks like in the next chapter. Like I said, I'm 10 years out. Right now, I'm really thirsty for somebody who's like 20 years out to tell me what that few chapters might look like, what the next 10 years might be like. Because after this winter, I kind of was having a hard time picturing it. Like, whoa, am I going back? Am I going back to those really hard days where catching my breath feels impossible? Because I haven't felt like that in a long time. Am I going back to the days of like really questioning the universe and trust and my fellow humans and like all the things which are also complicated by the state of the world? And I don't care what side you're on, you're struggling with how things are right now. And that matters. So join me, walk along me in my path of healing practices, more true stories, and let us join you, because you're not alone. And this can be a community for you. This can be a place where you feel seen, understood. I mean, that's some of the biggest feedback I get about the podcast is like, wow, that is how I feel. That is actually how I feel. And it feels, I'm going to use the word good, but you know what I mean, because nothing about it feels really necessarily good in the way that we normally use the word good, but it feels right to be heard. It feels right to be understood. It feels a little less lonely to say, yeah, that I'm not the only one who's dealing with that. Like right now, if somebody said, heck yes, Sarah, I'm 10, 12, 15 years in, and last winter, there was a couple of weeks where I was struggling to catch my breath. I'd be like, okay, I am not the only one. And there's something about that provides an infrastructure for this whole process, right? In this really uncontrolled environment to kind of find hope, a little forecasting, maybe tips, tricks, tools, those kinds of things. It's the infrastructure to the practice. So come practice with us. We would be really glad to have you.